popularized as you would think, but on the hill out there was lots of histories. The other one, have you ever heard of Harold Urey? See, I always look for inspiration. He discovered deuterium, and he was in on the Stanley Miller one where they took the H2 all those and made an amino acid. You know that famous experiment on the test tube thing? Harold Urey slept in a tent for 2 years outside the University of Montana because he didn't have money for rent. He figured, well, I'm doing all this research anyway, you know. So these guys, you know, worked their butts off. Everybody thinks when you get a Nobel Prize, like, oh, they had this prestigious life and all that. So my other point is the Cal Berkeley tie. You had Ernest Orlando Lawrence from South Dakota. G.N. Lewis grew up in Nebraska. And then right next door, have you ever heard of one of my sweetest little ladies, Dawn Hoffman? We call her modern day Marie Curie. She's still alive. I'll tell you, if you could call her on the phone and she'll take your call and she'll probably come out and talk to your kids. That's how sweet a lady she is.
Wonderful.
She's been emeritus. She's been trying to retire. She was the head of the Los Alamos lab in 1957 with 2 kids and a husband. Everything they said women in science couldn't do. Well, she's been doing it for years. Her, Algae Ursa, and Glenn Seaborg are the trans-uranium people, they call it. All those elements. So she was in on it. She's from Iowa. So I'm looking right at the country, and I'm like, right out in the middle of nowhere, South Dakota, Nebraska, and Iowa, you've got a modern Glenn Seaborg. You know where he went to high school? I went and did a lecture at his old school. Southgate. Not even Watts. That's more dangerous than Watts. And those kids were nice, I'll tell you, man. They were real polite. Crips and Bloods. Crips and Bloods.
We invited them to autograph your car.
I have this gets off the subject, but I have a 69 Fairlane that I did a poster of the elements to make it look cool. See how the elements encircle the earth now? So I had this old car I paid $75 for, 25 years, got me through Sonoma State and college we're in, driving around, put 100,000 miles, 120,000 on a $75 car. So what was I going to do with it? I painted the elements on it. This is back in '97. Right when they named the elements Seaborgium, he gives a talk at College of Marin, and my physics professor's driving him home. So I said, Dr. Peterson, you know, let's see if we can get him to sign the car. So I'll never forget that I almost missed it because I was looking for a camera. You know, you never get pictures and stuff. So they were taking off. I raced over. I blocked them in. I ran up to the window. I said, you know, can you sign my car? Because Dr. Seaborg and Peterson goes, oh, Glenn, you got to see this, right? I'll never forget. Glenn was like real big. He was 87 already, you know, all this arthritis. He gets out, he sees the car. It's all the elements all over the car. And he goes, oh my God. So he signed the car. I took the car to Watts after Glenn died a couple years after that and went into Southgate and did a free lecture for the kids. And when I wasn't looking, nobody was watching the car, we pulled it in on campus. They started, because I let kids sign it. It started with their initials underneath, you know, the thing, and then it got to the point where, you know, pick an element and sign it, because I give them ink that I know would fade, you know. Well, I came out, and these guys had ink that I didn't even know, whiteout, I guess, and stuff. There's still, I was looking at the card, it's up in storage in Santa Rosa. It's still, the ones from Watts are still on there. My ink is all faded. But they tagged the whole card. They were etching their initials in the glass with the switchblades on the backside and the passenger window. And first I got mad, but then I thought, you know, this is their environment. This is what I'm doing it for. So I still got mad and pulled the car out of the parking lot. They signed everywhere on the car. I mean, there were like 200 kids that were doing, I'm in there lecturing away because I'd go out at breaks and I'm like, sure, sign, you know, initial and stuff. So there's a giant clear spot right where Seaborg's signature was on the trunk, man. Nobody signed over it or anything. I mean, that's why I was talking about respect. The one little kid comes up and he shows me his red bandana, you know, he's and he goes, can I sign your card? And I'm like, oh, these guys were already signing it. And I'm like, he's asking. He's, you know, that polite. So anyway, they showed enough respect that they kept Glenn's signature clean and all that. Oh, my tangents, I'm going off. Okay, so you all get a periodic table. What I want to show you is, do you want to learn some science? Or you want to learn history? Or because the only way I learned the periodic table was that Richard Rhodes book. I started finding what was needed to be discovered, what was discovered and they didn't know what to do with. This is where the renaissance of history comes in. Do you know who Ernest Lawrence's brother was? A medical doctor. So when they were getting all this stuff, they're like, wow, what can we do with it? One of them was a radioactive carbon. What do you think went on to flourish from that? Melvin Calvin? Didn't you work with him in his office?
He was my OChem professor, one of the most boring lectures I've ever heard that Nobel Prize.
He got the radioactive carbon-13, so he just put it into the glycolysis thing in the Calvin, name and Calvin cycle.
He's the one who figured out where the oxygen goes in photosynthesis. He traced it. And once he got him excited about something, oh, man, this is someone who watched it. He actually came to CACT, California University, many years ago, and gave his, I think like 20 years ago, on using pond scum as a source of fuel. He was already working on that.
Do we have a whiteboard? Do we have color chalk markers, or do we use?
I don't think so.
New fancy building, you're still using chalk. This is what I do too. See, when I take those cars, we do like the Berkeley Parade. 11 years I've been in the parade with it. What do I?
Yeah. If we, yeah, they're trying not to do that. Green and red flag here.
So I don't know if any of you have seen the Berkeley Parade, but if I drive by, I always say, like, catch a falling star. Okay.
What was the name of Rhodes book again?
The Making of the Atomic Bomb. They got the Pulitzer or something for that, too. And here's that guy from England. It's like he never heard of any of this stuff. But that's where I got my thing. Harold Urey sleeping in a tent. Montana. Think what a winter in Montana is like. You know, I mean, these guys are cool. So this wakes people up when they're doing it too. And the balloon, I found no kids can resist a balloon. When a balloon is, I see it now. I teach a class with old folks. I'm focusing on the brain. And the same thing with the balloon. I get these pouty old ladies that are sitting here. We call it physical therapy. One guy started crying. I swear, he's like, I'm doing physical therapy. You know, we're listening to Glenn Miller. We're hitting the balloon around. Then you can't stop him. I mean, one guy, I swear, I'm not making this up. He wore his shoulder out because he kept hogging it from everybody. Tuesday afternoon, I come back on Thursday, the director tells me, we don't want you playing balloon anymore. Seriously, Alex or whatever his name was, his arm was in a sling. He couldn't roll his wheelchair. And I kept an hour, he's hogging the balloon. And this is a guy that you couldn't get out of his shell, you know. So I'm at this beautiful place where I work with the old folks and I work with the kids. And it's the same stuff. This is why this balloon stuff, if I could do a whole 2 hours just on balloon molecules. You got your whole combustion thing. Photosynthesis is another thing. I try and fill the gaps, what's not being taught. Here's a good trivia question. Photosynthesis, what's it do? Takes what out of the air? CO2 out of the air and the water up from the soil. Emits what? Where does the oxygen come from? The CO2 or the water?
Water.
Most people think CO2 because they're looking at the O. So you got to know that reaction that water is the one that's splitting up. And I had this, I minored in biology. I got a BS in chemistry, minor in physics and biology, AA College of Marin. So I have a research degree in chemistry, and it only took me 3 terms to get it. Reagan, Bush, and Clinton. I'm serious. 2 of those were doubles, remember? But I got a good education. I learned the biology. So my biology teacher's up there, and she even had it backwards. I'm like the electron. She's moving hydrogens and not following the bouncing electron, you know? And I'm like, come on. And she's like, oh, it's not important. And I'm like, that's the whole crux of the reaction. And here's a biology professor at State, not College of Marin, you know, promoting that kind of stuff. So that just fueled me. I'm like, if this is why our science education is getting so bad, my biochem teacher, same thing. He was doing something with molarity. Well, I was a chem major, so I had to learn that. And he goes, oh, biochemists are sloppy. You know, it's like he wasn't doing his sig figs and significant digits and stuff. And I'm like, well, don't teach me your bad habits, you know? So I stuck to the rules, and now I'm fanatical about it. What was I going to show you? The photosynthesis? Now, you can do photosynthesis with the balloons. And it's one of the most simplest reactions that it starts with. I have dogs.